David woke up at 3:33 a.m., as always, like every night for the past 6 months. Always 3:33, never 3:32, never 3:34. He reached out in the dark, touching Emma, checking, making sure she was still solid, still real, still existing in the 3 dimensions he'd learned in school were the only possible ones, except they weren't. 6 months ago, David had watched his town disappear, not destroyed, not evacuated. Disappear wasn't quite the right word, but it was the only one his brain could process without collapsing. Blackridge, Montana. Population 2,400, founded in 1974. Replaced by ancient forest in a single night. And then, 3 weeks later, back, as if nothing had happened. As if 2,400 people hadn't been disassembled atom by atom and translated into impossible geometries. The authorities called it emergency evacuation due to a chemical leak. The media reported a rare astronomical phenomenon. Psychiatrists diagnosed David, Emma, and the other survivors with stress-induced shared psychosis. No one talked about the harvest. No one could talk about it, because the truth had angles that shouldn't exist, shapes that made your eyes bleed when you tried to focus on them, a reality so impossible that the human brain simply refused to properly file it. David got up, walked to the window of their Missoula apartment. He looked out at the city lights scattered like terrestrial constellations, and he thought of Claire, who voluntarily dissolved into light and geometry. He thought of Tyler, who smiled as he ceased to be human. He thought of the 2,400 people of Blackridge who were processed and returned, now living with no memory of having existed as something more, something beyond, something incomprehensible. Were they happy in their translated forms? Did consciousness survive the transformation? Or were they destroyed and recreated, maintaining only the illusion of continuity? There was no way to know. There would never be a way. His phone vibrated on the bedside table. A text from Marcus. 3:34 a.m. None of them slept properly since Blackridge. A link. News of a village in Siberia that had disappeared for 2 days. Population returned intact. No memories. Russian authorities claimed a poorly explained military experiment. Another message. Rachel, a village in the Amazon, gone for a week. Indigenous people found them again, all alive, all confused about the lost time. More messages flooded in. Links from Emma, also awake. Incidents in Australia, Mongolia, Chile, Norway, small isolated communities, vanishing and reappearing. The harvest was happening worldwide. Maybe it had always been happening, only no one was connecting the dots. No one saw the pattern, except for those who had gone through the translation and returned, those who had seen what was on the other side. David got back into bed, lying next to Emma. She was awake too. He could tell by her breathing. They didn't speak. They just lay together in the dark, trying to find comfort in each other's solidity. But the question always came back. The question neither of them had the courage to verbalize aloud. Had they really escaped? Or were they just translations, good enough copies, left in the world with implanted memories to maintain the illusion? How would they know the difference? How would anyone know? Think about it for a moment. Think about the times you've woken up without knowing exactly how you got into bed. The days that seem to pass too fast or too slow. The moments when your street, your house, your own city seems slightly wrong. Angles that aren't how you remember them. Distances that don't make sense. Maybe your memory isn't failing. Maybe it's imperfect translation. Because Blackridge wasn't the first town to vanish. The records were there, hidden in lichen patterns, written in tree growth, cataloged in shapes that took centuries to process. 1823, 1901, 1974, and now, entire towns harvested, processed, returned. Cataloging cycles that had been happening since humanity built the first permanent community. And the most terrifying part? It wasn't hostility, it wasn't invasion. It was record-keeping, archiving, an intelligence so far beyond human comprehension that it didn't understand concepts like consent or cruelty, only efficiency in translating information from one form to another, humanity being cataloged one community at a time, not destroyed, preserved, in formats that transcended physical space and time. And there was no fighting something that didn't know you were fighting. No escaping something that processed entire civilizations the same way you processed a breath, automatically, mindlessly, without malice, just because it was its function. David closed his eyes, knowing he wouldn't sleep. knowing that in a few hours he would wake up again at 3:33, check if Emma was still solid, and spend another day pretending the world made sense. But before the cycle began again, before the morning brought the illusion of normalcy, he thought of the road to Blackridge, the van they drove back from the hunting cabin, the exact moment they rounded the last curve and realized everything, absolutely everything, had changed. Because that's where it started, on the winding road, cutting through the Bitterroot Mountains, the moment they realized the town they called home simply wasn't there anymore. And nothing, not authorities, not explanations, not 6 months of distance, could erase what they saw next. The road to Blackridge had always been a winding scar cutting through the Bitterroot Mountains. David knew every curve, every dip, every mile marker of those 50 kilometers of cracked asphalt. He'd driven that route hundreds of times over the past 10 years, since he and Emma moved to Montana. But on that Sunday morning, something was wrong. Is anyone else finding the road different? Marcus leaned between the front seats of the van, eyes wide behind his thick-rimmed glasses. Emma looked out the window, frowning. A high school physics teacher in Blackridge, she had a habit of analyzing everything with meticulous precision. "The signs," she murmured. "Where are the signs?" David slowed down, his hands tense on the wheel. She was right. There should have been a sign indicating Blackridge, 15 kilometers on that stretch. There always had been. Maybe they took them down for maintenance, Rachel suggested from the back seat, but her voice lacked conviction. The doctor unconsciously stroked her 4-month pregnant belly, a gesture David had noticed becoming more frequent since they saw the meteors the night before. Those meteors. The weekend at Claire's hunting cabin in the mountains had been David's idea. One last escape before Rachel's baby was born, before winter completely isolated the region. 6 people, 3 days of total disconnection. No internet, no worries, no. And then the sky caught fire. Not the way meteors normally fall. David had served in Afghanistan, seen air bombardments, mortar flares. This was different. The meteors descended in a perfect geometric pattern, lines of light tracing impossible angles through the atmosphere, as if someone were drawing something gigantic over Montana. "There!" Tyler pointed out the window, the 19-year-old practically pressing his face against the glass. "The river bend. We should be seeing the town by now." Claire, sitting next to Tyler, pulled out the topographical map she always carried. As a forest engineer, she had a knack for checking geographical landmarks. "He's right," she said, tracing her finger over the paper. "We passed the tributary 3 kilometers back. From here we should at least see the water tower." David sped up slightly, ignoring the growing knot in his stomach. He was probably just tired. 3 days of sleeping in a sleeping bag weren't as comfortable as they had been during his army days. Then they took the last curve, and Blackridge wasn't there. David slammed on the brakes so hard everyone was thrown forward. The van skidded, tires screeching, stopping at an angle across the road. "What the hell?" Marcus whispered. No one corrected him for swearing. Where Blackridge, Montana, population 2,400, founded in 1974, home to David and Emma, workplace of Rachel, Tyler's hometown, should have been, there was only forest. Not rubble, not ashes, not charred remains of 800 houses and commercial buildings. Primeval forest, giant pines rising like cathedral columns, Douglas firs with trunks too wide for 3 men to hug, dense, untouched, wild undergrowth, as if there had never been a town there. "This isn't..." Emma opened the door before the van had completely stopped, stumbling out. "This isn't possible." David followed her, his military boots hitting the asphalt that suddenly seemed less defined, with cracks he didn't remember existing. The rest of the group stepped out in shocked silence. Marcus pulled out his phone, fingers trembling as he slid across the screen. "No signal, 0 bars. He checked the GPS. "But the coordinates..." "Guys, the coordinates are right. Latitude 46. 0038, longitude 114.0847. We're exactly where we should be." "Let me see that." Emma snatched the phone from his hand, as if confirming it herself would change anything. Her lips tightened into a thin line. "He's right. These are Blackridge's coordinates." Claire was already 20 meters ahead, walking toward the tree line with the confidence of someone who had spent their entire life studying forests. She knelt, touching the soil, pulling up a handful of moss. "This doesn't make any sense," she murmured. "This moss, this vegetation." She looked up, and there was something terrifying in the intensity of her eyes. "This forest is at least 200 years old. Minimum." 200? Rachel shook her head. Claire, we left here Friday morning. Today is Sunday. I know what I'm seeing. Claire stood up, wiping her hands on her pants. I'm no botanist, but I know old-growth forest when I see it. The growth pattern, the canopy density, the soil composition. This is virgin forest, Rachel. Never been touched. Tyler started walking, then running, straight into the trees. Tyler, wait! David ran after him, Emma and the others following. The boy stopped abruptly about 50 meters ahead, spinning in a slow circle. Here! His voice came out strangled. Right here should be Main Street. My dad's pharmacy was right. He stepped on a patch of ferns. Right here. I worked there every summer since I was 14. I know every square inch of that store. David looked around, trying to orient himself. Tyler was right. If the GPS coordinates were correct, if the geography was correct, then that exact spot. The church, Emma said suddenly. If Tyler is right about the pharmacy, then the church should be... She walked 20 meters to the left, stepping around massive trunks. Here, there was no church, but there was something. Marcus walked closer, adjusting his glasses as if it would clear his vision. What the hell is that? A lamppost, or what was left of one. The metallic structure emerged from a pine trunk, not simply leaning or fallen against it, but fused, incorporated, as if the tree had grown around the metal for decades. Rachel touched the trunk with trembling fingers. That's not possible. Trees don't grow like that. Not in 2 days. Not in 2 years. Claire approached, circling the tree. Not in 20 years. Look at the bark, the growth layers. This took decades. Multiple decades. David felt his military training take over, pushing the panic down into a locked mental box he could open later. Now he needed facts, data, situation intelligence. Marcus, try to call emergency, anything. Emma, you and Claire do a 200-meter reconnaissance. Mark any other anomalies. Rachel, you stay here. I don't want you straining yourself too much. Tyler, with me. They obeyed automatically, responding to the command tone. David was already moving, Tyler running to keep up. Where are we going? The boy asked. The church parking lot. You parked your car there on Friday, remember? Maybe it's still... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They found the car. Tyler's blue Honda Civic was leaning against a young pine. No, not leaning, partially swallowed by it. The front bumper disappeared inside the wood. But what made David stop breathing was the state of the vehicle. Rust covered every inch of the exposed metal. The tires were rotten, cracked, and disintegrated rubber. Thick moss grew over the hood. The windshield glass was opaque with accumulated grime. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Tyler tried to open the driver's door. The handle crumbled in his hands, consumed by oxidation. I washed this car on Thursday. His voice was a hollow whisper. On Thursday. I just changed the oil. David forced himself to think. He had seen a lot in the Middle East. Effects of chemical weapons, radiation. Once he saw what thermobaric explosives did to structures. But this was different. A scream cut through his thoughts. Feminine. Emma. David ran. Tyler right behind. They found Emma and Claire near what David recognized, after a moment of disorientation, as the site of the public library. Emma was pointing at the ground, her hand trembling. In the middle of a circle of ferns partially covered by pine needles was a school backpack, hot pink with unicorn patches. David recognized it. Sarah Mitchell, a 5th grader, always sat in the front row during parent meetings. Claire knelt beside the backpack without touching it. There's more, she said softly. Look, scattered within a 10-meter radius, a child's thermal bottle, broken glasses, a modern cell phone, cracked screen, a car key with a keychain from the Blackridge hardware store, a pair of running shoes, still tied, as if someone had stepped out of them mid-stride, personal objects, dozens of them. Maybe hundreds if they kept searching, but no people, no bodies, no bones. They're not dead. Rachel emerged behind them, completely disregarding David's order to stay put. She stared fixedly at the pink backpack. My God, David, where are they? Before he could answer, Marcus came running through the forest, his face pale. The sun, he gasped. Did anyone else notice the sun? Emma looked up through the tree canopy. What about it? It's in the wrong position. Marcus pulled out his own phone. The time on my phone is correct. I sync it with the atomic clock every week. It's 10:47 a.m., but the sun, it's where it should be at 11:30, maybe noon. Are you sure? David asked. Dude, I install cell towers. I work with solar positions and azimuths all day. I'm telling you, we're ahead in the time zone. At least 40 minutes, maybe more. Emma started walking in circles, her mind clearly working at maximum speed. 40 minutes at this latitude, she calculated mentally. That would be, good heavens, that would be as if we had jumped almost 10 degrees of longitude, as if we were somewhere in Idaho, not Montana. But we're in Montana, Claire pointed to the surrounding mountains. That's Trapper Peak to the north. The Bitterroot River is running southeast, I can hear it. The geography is correct. Then how? Rachel began. A sound interrupted the question. Not exactly a sound, more an absence of sound that became so pronounced it created its own presence. Absolute silence. David suddenly realized. No birds were singing, no insects buzzing, no squirrels running through the branches. The forest was completely, impossibly, unnaturally silent. Is anyone else hearing this? Tyler whispered. Not hearing anything, Marcus corrected. There's nothing to hear. Claire started walking slowly between the trees, her head tilted, as if listening to something only she perceived. Forests don't get like this, she said. Even at night, even in winter, there's always something. Wind in the branches, animals moving, water dripping. Always. She touched the trunk of a fir. This isn't a real forest. It's scenery, a replica. Claire, you're not making sense, Emma said, but her voice was shaking. I'm making perfect sense. You just don't want to hear it. Claire spun to face them, and there was something wild in her eyes now. This forest isn't real. Not the way forests are supposed to be real. It's like someone studied forests, copied the elements, but didn't completely understand what makes them work. It's too perfect, too symmetrical. David looked around, trying to see what Claire saw. Now that she mentioned it, there was something disturbing about the pattern of the trees. They were spaced too regularly. The undergrowth was too uniform, like a hyper-realistic painting that was almost, but not quite, right. We need to get out of here, Rachel said suddenly, her hand clutching her belly. Now. We need to get back to the van and drive until we find signal. Find people. Find. I agree. David was already walking back to where they left the vehicle. Let's go. Everyone. Now. They ran through the forest, dodging trees, jumping over roots. David kept Emma in front of him, Rachel beside her, constantly checking that Claire, Marcus, and Tyler were following behind. Then they emerged from the tree line and stopped. The road had changed. Not drastically, but enough. The cracks were in slightly different positions. There was a branch lying across the asphalt that David was absolutely certain wasn't there 10 minutes ago. And the van was exactly where they left it. But now there was moss growing on one of the tires. Was that here before? Marcus approached, touching the green growth. No, Emma replied. It wasn't. Tyler was the first one in, starting the engine before David even gave the order. The engine caught, thank God. At least that worked, and Tyler began to maneuver. Where to? He asked. South, David decided. Back the way we came, until we hit the highway, until we find another town, until... Look, Claire pointed out the window. In the rearview mirror, David saw it. The forest where Blackridge should be seemed to glow. No, not glow exactly. Pulse, as if it were breathing. Drive, he commanded. Drive fast. Tyler accelerated, the tires singing on the uneven asphalt. The forest disappeared behind a curve. No one spoke for the first 5 kilometers. Marcus checked his cell phone compulsively, hoping that signal bars would magically appear. Rachel had her eyes closed, breathing controlled. Emma held David's hand so tightly his fingers were white. Then Tyler slammed on the brakes again. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Ahead, the road ended. Not in a blockade, not in a landslide. It simply ended. The asphalt gradually disappearing into a dirt track, then grass, then forest. As if the road was being not built, but deconstructed, reverted to its wild state. David got out of the van, walking to where the asphalt died. He knelt, touching the transition. It was perfectly smooth. No marks of excavation, no pieces of torn pavement. The asphalt simply ceased to exist. Try the other direction, Emma said, her voice strained but controlled. North. Tyler turned the van around. They went back down the same road, past the point where Blackridge was no longer, continued north. 3 kilometers later, the same phenomenon. The road ending in nothing. We're trapped, Marcus stated the obvious. We're stuck on a 15-kilometer stretch of road in the middle of nowhere, with a vanished town and a forest that shouldn't exist. We're not trapped, David insisted, forcing confidence into his voice. "We can go on foot. Cross the forest. Get to the next." "What if the forest keeps going?" Claire interrupted. "What if it's not just Blackridge? What if everything is like this now? Then we'll find out." David opened the back door of the van, starting to rummage through the supplies. They had food for 2 more days. Water, camping gear. They could survive. They had to survive. "We set up camp, wait for dawn, explore systematically. Someone will find us eventually." But even as he spoke, David wondered, what if no one is coming? What if no one can come? What if what happened to Blackridge happened to the whole world? Night fell too quickly. David noticed but didn't comment. The sun should still be an hour above the horizon when the darkness descended like a drawn curtain. Not a gradual twilight, just day and then night. They set up camp on the road, no one wanting to venture into the forest after dark. Marcus managed to light a fire using dry branches from the roadside, branches that Claire insisted were wrong somehow, but couldn't explain how. Rachel slept leaning against the van, physically and emotionally exhausted. Tyler sat away from the group, staring into the darkness in the direction where his hometown should be. Emma was glued to David, her head on his shoulder. "Tell me we'll be okay," she whispered. David opened his mouth to do just that, the reassuring lie ready on his lips. Then Claire screamed. Not a scream of fear, a scream of surprise, discovery. She was standing up, pointing at the forest. "Did you see it? Did you see it?" "What?" Marcus stood up, grabbing a flashlight. "The lights! There were lights in the trees, moving in patterns, and I..." Claire cut herself off abruptly, realizing how she sounded. "Didn't you see them?" "There was nothing," David said gently. "It's dark. You're tired. We're all going to rest and..." "I wasn't imagining it." Claire spun around, her eyes wild. There was something there, something moving. Tyler slowly got up, also looking at the forest. "I saw it," he said softly. "Not lights, but movement, silhouettes, like people walking among the trees, but the movements were wrong, too rigid or too fluid. I can't explain it." David picked up his own flashlight, pointing the beam into the trees. The circle of light revealed only trunks, branches, darkness beyond. "There's nothing there," he started to say. Then he saw it, only for a fraction of a second, at the edge of the flashlight's beam. A shape, humanoid, but the proportions were slightly incorrect. Arms too long, or maybe it was the legs that were too short. It was moving between 2 trees, but not walking. Sliding, floating. David blinked and the thing was gone. "Turn that damn flashlight off," Marcus hissed. "Now." David obeyed, and the darkness engulfed them again. The campfire seemed pathetic against the vastness of the night around them. "Everyone into the van," David ordered quietly. "Now." Silently. They moved as a single organism, waking Rachel, collecting essential gear, staying low. David was the last one in, closing the back door with a soft click. Then they waited. For long minutes nothing happened, just darkness and silence outside. Then the sounds began. Not animal sounds, not sounds of wind or water or any natural phenomenon David recognized. They were geometric. That was the only word his mind could supply. Sounds with angles, tones that should not be possible to produce with air and flesh and physical matter. "What the hell is that?" Marcus whispered, his hands over his ears. "I don't know," Emma replied, but she had pulled out a notebook and was frantically writing something down by the cell phone light. "But there's a pattern, a mathematical rhythm. It's like code, a language." "Language of what?" Tyler asked. Emma didn't answer. She didn't have one. The sounds continued for hours, sometimes distant, sometimes so close that the van seemed to vibrate with them. No one slept. No one even tried. Then, as abruptly as they began, the sound stopped, and the sun rose. Again, too quickly. Total darkness to complete daylight in a matter of minutes. Not the gradual progression of dawn. David cautiously opened the van door, expecting, he didn't know what. Monsters? Soldiers? Explanations? The forest looked identical to the day before. Silent, motionless, empty. But now there was something more. On the road, drawn in something that looked like ash or powder, was a symbol. No, multiple symbols. Complex, intricate patterns, forming a circle about 5 meters in diameter. Claire jumped out of the van before David could stop her, practically running to the markings. "This isn't random," she said, her voice filled with unsettling awe. "This is intentional design, communication, Emma joined her, comparing the symbols with the notes she had taken during the night. "They're the same patterns," she whispered. "The sounds last night, they were these shapes. Someone was drawing this through sound. Someone or something," Marcus corrected, keeping his distance from the symbols. Rachel emerged from the van, pale but determined. "We need to make a decision. Do we stay here waiting for a rescue that may never come? Or do we go into that forest and try to find answers?" "Answers?" Marcus laughed humorlessly. "Rachel, we don't even know what questions to ask. An entire town disappeared. It was replaced by an impossible forest that draws cryptograms on the asphalt. What answers do you expect to find?" "Any," Tyler said, his voice firm for the first time since everything began. "My dad is in there. My mom is in there. Every person I've ever known is in there. I'm not going to sit here while—" His voice cracked. "I need to know what happened to them." David looked at Emma. She nodded slightly. "We'll explore," he decided. "But together. No one splits up. We maintain constant eye contact. At the first signs of real danger, we go back to the van." "Agreed." They all agreed. They prepared methodically. David distributed camping knives. Marcus took a walking stick as an improvised weapon. Claire grabbed her field sampling kit, useless for protection, but she insisted she needed to document everything. Emma stopped next to David as he checked the emergency backpack for the third time. "I know what you're thinking," she said softly. "That you should have kept us safe. That you should have insisted we come back sooner. Before the meteors. Before all this. It's not. It is exactly that. I've known you for 12 years, David. I know your Commander Guilt face." She held his face with both hands. "We couldn't have known. No one could." David covered her hands with his. "If something happens to you, it won't. Because you're going to protect me, and I'm going to protect you, and we'll get out of this together. Right?" He wanted to believe it. God, how he wanted to believe it. "Right." He lied. They entered the forest at 7:23 a.m., according to Marcus's cell phone clock. The sun was in a position that suggested it was at least 8:15. The forest changed as they went deeper, subtly at first. David barely noticed. A tree that seemed to be 10 meters to the left was now on the right, a rocky outcrop he was sure he had seen before, but at a different angle, as if the forest was gently rearranging itself around them. "Is anyone else feeling this?" Marcus asked after 20 minutes. "Like we're walking in circles, but the circles are wrong?" "We're not walking in circles." Claire checked her compass for the 5th time. "We're going in a straight line northeast. Perfectly straight. The compass doesn't lie. But the topography is wrong," Emma pointed out. "We went down a slope 10 minutes ago. Shouldn't we have gone up another one? We've been walking on flat ground for too long." Tyler stopped abruptly. "Here," he said. "Right here should be the school." They were in a small clearing surrounded by mature pines. In the center, the soil was different, more compacted with less undergrowth. "How do you know?" Rachel asked. Tyler walked to the center of the clearing, turning in a slow circle. "Because I know. The same way I knew where the pharmacy was yesterday. It's like," he touched his own head, "like there's a map in here. Spatial memory. I can feel where everything should be." "Me too," Emma admitted. "I thought it was just imagination, but Tyler is right. There's a spatial awareness. As if Blackridge is still here, just invisible." Claire knelt, touching the compacted soil. "Not invisible, overlaid." She pulled up a handful of earth. "See? The texture is different here. Different mineral. This area was paved once. Recently, the soil chemistry is still altered." "But the trees?" Marcus pointed to the surrounding pines, each one at least half a meter in diameter. "Those trees are decades old. How can they be growing in soil that was recently paved?" "They can't," Claire replied simply. "But they are." David walked around the clearing, trying to visualize Tyler's school. He had been there for parent meetings a few times when Emma taught the younger grades. He remembered the main entrance facing west, the sports fields to the south. Then he saw it. At the northern edge of the clearing, partially hidden by shrubs, was a swing set, oxidized metal chain hanging from a wooden structure. But it wasn't simply there. It was emerging from a tree trunk, as if the tree had grown through the playground. "Tyler," he called, "look at this." The boy came running, stopped, turned pale. "The elementary school playground," he whispered. "I used to play there when I was 6. More objects began to appear as they searched. A goalpost half swallowed by the ground. Pieces of concrete with crayon marks still visible. A tattered American flag hanging from a branch that had grown through the flagpole. and backpacks. Dozens of them, scattered across the clearing like seeds, each in different states of degradation. Rachel picked one up, opening it with trembling hands. Inside, notebooks with pages dated from the week before, a lunchbox with a sandwich that should have been fresh but was covered in mold, a cell phone that lit up when she pressed the button. Full battery, but no signal. "They were here on Friday," she said, her voice breaking. "These children were here on Friday morning, and then—" A sound interrupted her words. Not the geometric sounds of the night before. Something more disturbing. Children's laughter, faint, distant, echoing from no specific direction, and all at once. Tyler spun around, searching frantically. "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" "Just wind," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It wasn't wind," Tyler insisted. "It was children. I know those voices. Kevin Marsh, Sarah Mitchell, Jenny Takahashi. I knew those kids." "Tyler," David began. "Listen." Everyone fell silent, and there it was, clearer now. Children's voices, singing something. Not words exactly, but a melody. Familiar, yet completely strange. Emma started walking toward the sound as if hypnotized. "Emma, don't." David held her arm. "It's the school song," she whispered. "The song that played during recess. I heard it every day from my classroom." "Teacher Chen," the voice came from behind them. Clear, loud, unmistakable. They all turned. At the edge of the clearing, between two trees, stood a girl, maybe 10 years old. School uniform, hair in braids. Sarah Mitchell. Emma took a step forward. "Sarah? Sarah, are you okay?" The girl smiled, and there was something wrong with that smile. Too wide, too many teeth. "Did Teacher Chen come to play?" The girl's voice came out in a sing-song, artificial tone. "Everyone is playing here, it's fun. So much fun." Tyler started running toward her. "Sarah, Sarah, where are the others? Where is my dad?" The girl turned her head to look at him, turned completely around, 180 degrees, her neck rotating in a way no human neck should rotate. "Did Tyler come to play too?" The voice now came from somewhere else, even though the mouth was moving. "Everyone can play. It's forever. Forever, 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 forever." The word repeated, getting more distorted, faster, until it was no longer a word but pure sound. That same sound geometry from the night before. Then the girl blinked, not blinked, vanished, like an erased pixel. 1 second she was there, the next she simply wasn't. Tyler stopped where she had been, searching frantically. Nothing. No footprints, no residual body heat, nothing. "That wasn't real," Marcus said, his voice high-pitched. "That wasn't a real person. It was, what, a projection? A hologram?" Claire was frantically writing in her notebook, drawing what she saw. Not a hologram. Holograms don't interact with ambient light that way. And the way she disappeared. She looked up, her eyes gleaming with something between terror and fascination. It was like someone deleted her, edited her out of reality. "They're messing with me." Tyler fell to his knees. "Whoever they are, they're using the people from my town to mess with me." David knelt beside him, his hand on the boy's shoulder. "We're trying to communicate. Maybe they don't know how to do it right. Maybe they're trying to show us something." "Show us what?" Rachel asked. "That the people still exist," Emma said suddenly. "Somehow, somewhere." Sarah was there. For a moment she really was. It wasn't a ghost or a memory. It was a reflection, an echo. From where? Emma had no answer. They continued exploring. Every important location in Blackridge revealed the same thing. Objects incorporated into trees, vegetation growing in impossible architectural patterns, and occasionally those apparitions. At the hospital site, Rachel saw her colleagues through the trees. They walked the invisible corridors, pushing stretchers that didn't exist, attending patients who weren't there, all moving in perfect loops, repeating the same actions indefinitely. In what should have been the city hall, Marcus found records. Not physical records, patterns in the moss, lichen growth that, when viewed from the right angle, formed words, dates, names, information about Blackridge, and something else, something that chilled his blood. "Guys," he called everyone over, "you need to see this." He pointed to a specific trunk where the lichen formed perfectly legible text. Blackridge, Montana founded 1974. Population 2,400 and below. Blackridge, Montana founded 1901. Population 1850 event. Unintelligible symbol. And below that, Blackridge, Montana, founded 1823. Population 320. Event, same symbol. 3 foundings, Emma whispered. 3 different Blackridges, 3 events. Not 3, Claire pointed to lower markings, almost hidden by ferns. 4, 5, 6. Blackridge has been founded and refounded multiple times, always in the same location, always ending with that symbol. What symbol? Tyler asked. Claire traced the design in the air, unable to truly reproduce it in 2 dimensions. It was something that required depth, impossible angles to make sense. Whatever happened to us, David said slowly, has happened before, multiple times, centuries ago. Then why doesn't anyone know? Rachel questioned. Why are there no historical records of entire towns disappearing? Because they come back, Emma concluded. Like the meteors, like the event. Everything returns to normal afterwards. People are returned with no memory of what happened. The town reconstitutes itself, and history continues as if nothing happened. Marcus laughed humorlessly. So we're, what? Being studied, cataloged, archived in some alien library? Processed, Claire murmured, still drawing symbols. Translated, not destroyed, transformed into something else, another form, and then translated back. Translated by whom? Tyler practically screamed. Why? What the hell do they want? In response, the forest shook, not an earthquake. Something different, as if reality itself had hiccuped, skipped a frame, recalibrated, and suddenly, David saw, for a fraction of a second, he saw Blackridge. Not the forest, not the trees, the actual town, houses, streets, people walking, cars passing, all perfectly normal, perfectly real. But the angles were wrong. The distances didn't make sense. A street folded in directions that shouldn't exist. A building had more internal walls than the exterior suggested was possible. People walked on surfaces that were vertical from one perspective, horizontal from another. It was Blackridge, but Blackridge translated into geometry that the human brain couldn't process properly. Then the vision passed, and there was only forest again. David fell to his knees, vomiting, not from physical nausea, but from incomprehensibility. His brain had tried to make sense of what he saw, and simply crashed. You saw it. Emma was next to him, also pale. You saw it too. He nodded, unable to speak. I saw my classroom, she whispered, but it was folded, like origami. The students were there, but they existed in multiple directions simultaneously, and they were conscious, alive, but not the way we were before. Marcus was against a tree, hyperventilating. I saw the cell towers I installed, but they weren't towers anymore. They were conductors, antennas, connecting Blackridge to places that aren't places, transmitting the town out, up, to dimensions that have no names. Rachel was crying silently, her hands on her belly. I saw the hospital, I saw the patients, I saw the babies in the maternity ward, all still alive, but existing in states we shouldn't be able to exist in. She looked at David with terrified eyes. What are they doing to us? Claire was the only one who seemed calm. Too calm. She was drawing frantically, filling pages with symbols, equations, diagrams that looked simultaneously mathematical and artistic. I understand now, she kept saying. I'm starting to understand. It's so obvious. How did we not see it before? Claire, David forced himself to stand up. What are you doing? Learning, she smiled, and there was something feverish in that smile. The language, the patterns. It's so elegant, David, so perfectly logical. They're not hurting us. They're translating us, elevating us, transforming us into something more efficient, more pure. More pure? Emma approached cautiously. Claire, are you listening to what you're saying? For the first time in my life, I'm truly listening, truly seeing. Claire spun around, pointing to the surrounding trees. Don't you realize? The forest is the town. The town is the forest. They are 2 translations of the same information, 2 ways of existing in space. And there are other ways, infinite ways. We just need to learn the language to access them. Tyler grabbed Claire by the shoulders. Where is my dad? If you understand so well, tell me where he is. Claire touched his face gently. He's here, Tyler. He always has been. Just in a form your eyes can't see, your ears can't hear. But I can teach you. I can teach all of you. Claire, you need to stop. David used his command voice. Whatever is happening to you, fight it. It's not something to fight. She laughed. It's a gift, An opportunity. We are so limited in our bodies, our 3 dimensions, our linear perception of time, but they can free us from that, if we just let them. Then Claire began to walk, not toward any specific place, just walking with measured, deliberate steps, toward the central area of Blackridge. "Claire!" Rachel screamed. "Don't walk away!" But Claire didn't stop. She didn't look back. David and Tyler ran after her, but it was as if she was moving at normal speed while they ran in slow motion. The distance between them increased impossibly, despite their legs pumping faster and faster. Then Claire reached the central clearing, the site where Blackridge's main square once was. She stopped in the exact center, arms open. "I understand," she said, and her voice carried throughout the forest with crystalline clarity. "I understand what you need. I understand the purpose, and I consent." "No!" Tyler lunged toward her, but it was too late. Claire smiled, a smile of genuine ecstasy, of transcendent understanding, and then she came apart. She didn't explode. She didn't melt. She didn't disappear. She came apart like an image being deconstructed pixel by pixel, atom by atom, being disassembled and reassembled into something human eyes simply couldn't follow. For a moment, a terrifying moment, David saw what Claire became, a structure of light and geometry. Existing at angles his mind screamed were impossible. She was still conscious. He could feel it, but it was a consciousness so far beyond human that trying to comprehend it physically hurt. Then she was completely gone. Or not gone, but became part of something bigger, something that was everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Where Claire had been, the soil glowed. Phosphorescent patterns pulsed like code, like language, like music translated into light. Tyler reached the spot, falling to his knees, trying to touch the patterns. "Claire? Claire?" No response. Just the patterns pulsing, gradually fading until they disappeared completely. Marcus vomited. Rachel sobbed. Emma held David, trembling uncontrollably. "We need to get out of here," David said, his voice automatic, military. "Now. Forget exploration. Forget answers. We need to get out of this forest before it takes us too." But even as he spoke, he knew there was no way out. The forest was rearranging itself around them. The road that brought them here no longer existed in the same way. They were trapped at the heart of something that didn't understand compassion, pity, or individual choice. They were caught in the harvest. And the harvest wasn't complete yet. They ran, without direction, without a plan. They just ran. David pulled Emma by the hand. Rachel stumbled behind them. Marcus shouted nonsensical instructions. Tyler cried as he ran. The forest folded around them. Trees that weren't there a second ago sprang up in their paths. Roots rose from the ground like tentacles. The air itself seemed to thicken, making every breath difficult. And the apparitions multiplied. People from Blackridge, hundreds of them, manifesting among the trees. Not threatening, just there, walking their eternal loops, living their translated lives, existing in intermediary states between real and impossible. David saw his neighbors, the woman who sold coffee every morning, the mechanic who fixed his van the month before, all walking, smiling, living in geometries that shouldn't exist. Then Tyler stopped so abruptly that Marcus collided with him. "There," Tyler pointed with a trembling hand. "There, it's my dad." In the middle of a circle of trees, perfectly still, was a middle-aged man. Gray hair, glasses, pharmacist's vest. Tyler's father. "Dad." Tyler slowly advanced. "Dad, it's me. Tyler, your son, remember?" The man turned his head. Smooth, natural movement. "Tyler." The voice was right, the intonation familiar. "You came. I knew you would." "Dad, what happened? Where were you?" Tyler started to cry. "I was so scared." His father smiled gently. "You don't need to be scared, son. It's all right now. It's better. So much better." "Better?" Tyler advanced further, trying to touch his father. "Dad, you disappeared. The whole town disappeared. I need to get you out of here. We need to—" "No," his father interrupted. "You don't. I don't want to leave. It's wonderful here, Tyler. I finally understand. I finally see. And you can too. You just need to stop resisting." "Tyler, step away from him," David ordered. "Now." But Tyler wasn't listening. He was just meters from his father now, arms outstretched. "Dad, please, just come back. Just come home with me." The older man extended his own hand. "I am home, Tyler. More home than I've ever been. And I want you to stay with me. Forever. Together." Their fingers touched, and Tyler screamed, not from pain, from forced comprehension. His body arched, eyes rolling, mouth open in a silent scream as something poured information directly into his mind. David ran, trying to pull him back, but the moment he touched Tyler, he felt it too. The mind of something vast, something incomprehensible, something so far beyond human understanding that trying to perceive it was like an ant trying to comprehend the internet. But not hostile, just functional, processing, cataloging, translating billions of data points into more efficient storage formats. And Blackridge was just a data point, just like hundreds of other towns, villages, settlements throughout human history, all collected, processed, stored in forms that transcended physical space. Not an invasion, not an attack, just archiving. Humanity being cataloged, one community at a time, since the species existed. David pulled away, falling backward, his brain boiling with what he had just realized. Tyler was still connected, body trembling, tears streaming down his face. But they weren't tears of pain. They were of something deeper, more complex. Terror and ecstasy mixed in impossible proportions. Emma pulled David away, Marcus helping. "Don't touch him," Rachel screamed. "Don't touch anything." But Tyler was already changing. His form began to glow at the edges, as if being traced with light. The contours became less defined, more translucent. He was being translated in real time. "Tyler!" Emma screamed. "Fight it! Stay with us!" The boy looked at them. His eyes were still human, still recognizable, and in them was something terrifying. Acceptance. "It doesn't hurt," he whispered. "Not the way you think. It's like waking up, like realizing you've been dreaming your whole life and finally, you're real." "You are real here," Marcus shouted. "With us. Don't let them take you." Tyler smiled sadly. "They're not taking me, Marcus. I'm going. Because now I know. I know where my dad is. I know where everyone is. And it's tears of joy. It's beautiful there." His form began to pulse, synchronized with the light patterns Claire had left behind. "Don't worry," were his last words. "You'll understand too. Eventually. We all do. In the end." Then Tyler came apart the same way Claire had. Atom by atom, thought by thought, being disassembled and reassembled into impossible geometries. For one terrifying and glorious moment, David saw what Tyler became. A structure of pure consciousness, free from flesh, free from three-dimensional limitations, existing in states that human physics had no words to describe. And then he too was gone. The father, or the thing wearing the father's shape, watched the entire process with silent approval. Then it turned to the remaining 4 survivors. "Who else?" it asked gently. "Who else wants to see?" David pulled out his camping knife, hand trembling but determined. "You come near any of us and I swear I'll..." The thing that looked like Tyler's father tilted its head, curious. "Threat? Why? There is no pain here. There is no fear. Only transformation. Only betterment." "We didn't ask for betterment," Emma said, her voice firm despite the terror. "We don't consent. This is kidnapping. This is violation." "Consent," the thing tested the word. "Interesting concept. Limited. When you sleep, do you consent to the dreams? When you digest food, do you consent to every enzymatic process? Some processes simply are. Consent is irrelevant." "It's not irrelevant to us," Rachel spat the words. "We are conscious beings. We have the right to choose our destinies." The thing seemed to consider this. Then it simply disappeared, like Tyler and Claire before. They were alone in the forest. 4 out of the 6 who started. "We need to move," David said, his voice hoarse. "Now." "I don't know where to, but we can't stay still." They started walking. Not running anymore. It was useless. But walking with purpose, trying to maintain distance from any apparition that arose. The forest continued its silent reorganization. But now David was beginning to see the patterns. Not completely, not the way Claire or Tyler saw, but enough to realize that nothing was random. Every tree, every stone, every root was positioned with mathematical purpose. The entire forest was an organic computer, processing the town it had swallowed. "Look," Marcus stopped, pointing at something ahead. It was a boundary, a visible edge where the forest simply ended. Beyond it, David saw asphalt, real road. "It can't be that easy," Rachel whispered. "Can it?" Only one way to find out. They cautiously approached the edge. The line demarcating forest from road was perfectly straight, as if drawn with a ruler. David extended his hand, touching the air where the two realities met. There was resistance, like touching viscous water, but not impenetrable. "I think we can get through," he said, "but I don't know what happens if—" "Try again," Rachel insisted. "Try to cross." David pushed his hand against the invisible barrier. This time he pushed harder, forcing it. His hand went through, centimeter by centimeter. It hurt in a strange way, not physical pain, but existential, as if every atom were being questioned about its right to exist there. But it worked. His hand was on the other side, in the real world, outside the harvest. "Let's go," he said. Together, at the same time, they linked together. David holding Emma, Emma holding Rachel, Rachel holding Marcus. A human chain. Then they pushed. The resistance increased. It felt like they were pushing through molasses, then concrete, then something even denser. Muscles screaming, lungs burning, but they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. And then, with an almost audible pop, they were on the other side, on the road, out of the forest, in the real world. They collapsed onto the asphalt, panting, checking each other to ensure they had all made it intact. "We did it." Marcus laughed in disbelief. "We actually did it. We're out." David turned to look back. The forest was still there, immense, silent, impossible. But from the outside, it looked just like a normal forest. No visible edge, no sign of the horror it contained. "Where to now?" Rachel asked. "Nearest town." David was already on his feet, helping the others up. "Police, federal authorities, someone who can send teams, isolate the area, rescue the people who are still." "David," Emma touched his arm, her voice trembling. "Look." She pointed to their van, still parked on the roadside where they left it. There was no moss growing on the tires. The vehicle was clean, normal, as if they had gotten out of it 5 minutes ago, not an entire day. Marcus ran to the van, passing his hand over the hood. "It's cold," he said, confused, "like it hasn't been running in hours. But we drove it yesterday morning." David checked the clock on the dashboard when he opened the door. 10:47 a.m. The same time Marcus had checked when they first entered the forest that had replaced Blackridge. "This doesn't make sense." Rachel shook her head. "We spent hours in there, a whole day. How can it be the same time?" "Different time," Emma whispered. "Inside the translation, time works differently. For us it was hours. For the world." She looked up at the sky, checking the sun's position. For the world, it was minutes, maybe less. David felt his stomach drop. If only minutes had passed on the outside. Then Claire and Tyler disappeared almost instantly from the real world's perspective. No time for rescue, no time to save them. "Let's go." He opened the van doors. "We need to get to the nearest town. Call authorities. Bring help before what? Before more people were translated. Before the forest spread." He didn't know. He only knew they had to act fast. They drove in tense silence, Marcus at the wheel now because David's hands were shaking too much. 15 minutes of winding road until they reached Hamilton, the nearest town. Marcus parked in front of the police station. They all got out, looked at each other for a moment, silently preparing to tell the impossible, and went inside. The sheriff was a middle-aged man named Burton, who listened with an increasingly skeptical expression as David tried to explain. Vanished town, impossible forest, people translated into incomprehensible geometries. "So you're telling me," Burton leaned back in his chair, "that Blackridge disappeared?" "Yes." Emma leaned forward. "Completely. Replaced by forest. We need to send teams. We need to—" Burton raised his hand, picking up the phone. He dialed a number, waited. "Hey Linda, it's Burton in Hamilton. Can you confirm if everything is normal over there in Blackridge?" Pause. "Uh-huh. Everything working?" "No emergencies, just checking." "Thanks." He hung up, looking at the four of them with something between pity and concern. "Linda has worked at the Blackridge gas station for 15 years. I just spoke to her. The town is perfectly fine." "No." Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell over. "No, that's impossible. We were just there. We saw it. The town is gone." "Sir, sit down." Burton used his voice of authority. "Have you experienced some kind of trauma? Used any substance? Because I'm trying to help here, but you need to understand that Blackridge is fine. I can send a cruiser with you if you want to see with your own eyes." David and Emma exchanged looks. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. "Yes," David said slowly. "We want to see." The police cruiser escorted them back down the road. David recognized every curve, every tree, every landmark they had passed an hour before while fleeing the nightmare. Then they arrived at the point where the forest should have been, and Blackridge was there, perfectly intact. Houses in their places, cars on the streets, people walking on the sidewalks, the water tower against the blue sky. Everything exactly as it should be, as it always was. Marcus got out of the van before it even completely stopped, running toward Main Street, spinning in circles. No, this isn't right. It was all forest. It was all forest. The accompanying officer, Officer Reeves, spoke on the radio with a worried tone, mentioning possible collective psychotic break. David slowly walked down the street that an hour ago was covered in centuries-old pines. His feet touched solid asphalt. His eyes saw familiar buildings. His nose smelled the normal aromas of a small town: coffee, car exhausts, bread from the bakery. But he remembered. He remembered the trees. He remembered Claire dissolving into light. He remembered Tyler being translated while his father, or something wearing his shape, watched. David, Emma was beside him, pale. How? How did they do it so fast? They didn't, he whispered. Not from their perspective, remember? Time. Time works differently inside the translation. For us it was hours. For the world? She looked at the sky, checking the sun's position. For the world it was minutes, maybe less. And then they returned it, completed the process, and no one will ever believe us, Rachel finished, tears in her eyes. Because there's no evidence, no witnesses besides the four of us. There's no... Tyler, David said suddenly. Tyler and Claire. If the town was returned, were they too? Or they ran to the pharmacy. The sign still read, Mitchell's Pharmacy, in familiar green letters. David went inside, and there he was. Tyler Mitchell, 19 years old, organizing shelves of medicine, alive, solid, real. Tyler! David crossed the store in 3 strides. Tyler, thank God you're okay, we thought. The boy turned around, smiling politely but without recognition. Can I help you, sir? David stopped. Tyler, it's me, David. We were together, in the forest. Your dad. You saw your dad and... Sorry, sir. Tyler maintained the smile, but there was genuine confusion in his eyes. I think you're confusing me with someone else. No, I'm not. Emma approached. Tyler, you were my student. You left town with us for the weekend. We went to Claire's cabin. Do you remember Claire? Something passed over Tyler's face. A shadow. A hesitation. I don't know any Claire, ma'am. And he frowned as if trying to access a memory that was no longer there. I didn't leave town this weekend. I've been working here with my dad the whole time. Where is your dad? David asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear it. In the back, checking inventory. Tyler pointed to the rear of the store. Do you want me to call him? David slowly shook his head. He couldn't bear to see that man again. To see the thing that had used his shape inside the translation. Marcus pulled David by the arm, drawing him away. He doesn't remember, Marcus whispered urgently. Why doesn't he remember? Claire disappeared. Tyler too. But he's here, alive, and he doesn't remember anything. Emma watched Tyler go back to work, organizing medicines with mechanical, efficient movements. Look at him, she said softly. Really look. David looked and saw. Tyler moved normally, spoke normally, looked completely human, but when the sunlight through the storefront hit him at a certain angle, his silhouette flickered. For fractions of a second, there were extra angles, shadows that shouldn't be there, as if he wasn't completely solid in this reality, as if he were a projection, a translation of something existing simultaneously elsewhere. He was returned, David comprehended, horror growing in his voice, but not completely, not the way he was. He's a copy, reconstruction, a translated version maintaining only the appearance of humanity. Rachel covered her mouth, stifling a sob. And Claire? They found her 2 hours later, working in the Forest Service office on the edge of town. Claire Donovan, forest engineer, smiling and greeting colleagues, reviewing environmental reports. No memory of the hunting cabin. No memory of having deciphered the language of the impossible forest. No memory of having voluntarily dissolved into geometry and light. When David tried to make her remember, Claire called security. 3 days later, they stopped trying to convince anyone. The psychiatric evaluations began. David, Emma, Rachel, and Marcus diagnosed with shared psychotic episode, possibly induced by accidental ingestion of a hallucinogenic substance. Recommendations for medication. Intensive therapy. They accepted everything silently. Took the pills. attended the sessions, told the therapists what they wanted to hear, that they realized now it had all been a hallucination, shared trauma, something explainable and treatable. But at night, when the rest of the world slept, they met, David and Emma, Rachel, Marcus, sharing the same reality that no one else could see. "I saw Tyler yesterday," Marcus said one night, 3 weeks after Blackridge didn't disappear. "On the street. He blinked. Not an eye blink. He blinked, like a video image skipping frames. For less than a second he wasn't there, then he was again." "Claire too," Rachel confirmed. "She was with colleagues laughing at some joke, but the laughter came out wrong. Half a second delay between the mouth opening and the sound appearing, as if it was being transmitted from very far away." Emma was at the window, looking out at Missoula where they now lived. None of them could bear to stay in Blackridge. "They didn't come back," she said. "Not really. What came back are echoes, projected shadows, just enough to maintain the appearance of normalcy so no one asks difficult questions." "And us?" David asked the question they all avoided. "Why do we remember? Why weren't we translated like the others?" No one had an answer, just the heavy silence of uncertainty, and the unspoken question, had they really not been? 6 months later, David woke up at 3:33 a.m., always 3:33, for 6 consecutive months, every night. He woke up at that exact time. Emma slept beside him, but he checked, always checked, to make sure she was solid, real, completely present in all the dimensions he could perceive. He walked to the apartment window, looking out at sleeping Missoula, city lights scattered like terrestrial constellations, and he thought of Claire. He thought of Tyler. He thought of the thousands of people in Blackridge who were processed and returned, living their lives without knowing they once existed as something more, something beyond, something incomprehensible. Were they happy there, in their translated forms? Did consciousness survive in states beyond matter? Or were they destroyed and recreated, maintaining only the illusion of continuity? There was no way to know. There would never be a way to know. And that was the most terrifying part of all. "We need to tell people," he said. "We need to warn." "Who will believe us?" Emma interrupted. "We told them. We screamed. We begged for attention. And what did we get? Psychiatric evaluations. Pitying looks. Suggestions for medication. So what? We just live knowing that at any moment, any place can be harvested." Emma had no answer. They went back to bed. They lay hugging each other, trying to find comfort in each other's solidity. But Emma couldn't stop thinking, how many times had this happened to them? How many times had they been harvested and returned with rewritten memories, living loops of existence without realizing? How many times would it still happen? And the most terrifying question, were they truly here now? Or was this also just another translation, another way of existing, as illusory as the forest that had replaced Blackridge? She held David tighter. He held her back. And together, they waited for the morning light, without knowing if it would come, without knowing if it mattered. Because in the end, all of them, every person, every town, every civilization, were just data waiting to be processed, files waiting to be cataloged, temporary translations of something greater they could never comprehend. And the harvest never stopped. It just waited, patiently, inevitably, always processing, always translating, always harvesting.